Hello there, so in this video I wanted to talk about some of the comic book gimmicks that have been tried over the years, and I thought what better way to do it than a tier list on how likely I am to fall for the gimmick. So, comic books originally were viewed more as disposable media like a newspaper would, so the comic gimmicks kind of signal the start of the collector market that came with the rise of the direct market and comic book shops popping up everywhere. By the 80s and 90s, comic shops were all over the place and publishers were trying all kinds of goofy things. So a lot of these gimmicks are much more about the collectability as opposed to the actual story inside, but as you will see, some of these, that is not necessarily the case. So we have the tiers right here. I need it. You have my attention. In the dollar bin. Leave it on the shelf. And you tried. Leave it on the shelf is like, okay, I could see the appeal in it, but nah, it's a miss. And you tried is just in the trash, essentially. In the dollar bin is like, okay, you know, if it was in a dollar bin, if it was cheap enough, but not something I would rush out. You have my attention, not something I'd pre-order, not an instant buy, but I would definitely consider it if I saw it on the shelf at the shop. And I need it. These are the ones that you gotta rush out and pick up right away. So I have 10 comic gimmicks here that I wanted to talk about, and the way I'm going to rank them is based on both my personal preference and what I see as the most value to a consumer. So I wanted to start off first with the classic, the most common type of gimmick that you'll find, the variant cover. And the first ever variant cover was for John Byrne's Man of Steel #1. I could argue two ways for this, actually. I think if you look at variant covers as they were first released, you know, like at a certain point they were more for special releases. It actually, like, it felt kind of cool to get a variant cover because they weren't everywhere. And then now you have today's market where pretty much every book has at least one variant cover, and a lot of them don't even really have anything to do with the story. As a reader, and I feel like a lot of other readers out there share my sentiment, I like my books to go together. I kind of like the cover A's at this point, so unless if something really catches my eye, if it's from an artist I really like Lieber Mayho or something like that, then I might go out for the variant cover. But I think where we are right now, you have my attention. If we were talking like the 80s and 90s, where they were less common, I'd put it in I need it. Because that would be something, if you saw it on the shelf, that would be an instant grab. But right now, the state of variants, I'd say you have my attention. So this next one is interesting because I've been seeing these pop up within the last year or so. You have these Marvel Red Band, and wasn't really sure what they were, so I looked it up, and it's actually pretty interesting. For $1 extra, you can get some of Marvel's trademark comics that are coming out, but with a little bit extra material and slightly more explicit. So I think that's actually pretty neat. I think that for that extra $1, you are actually getting more content out of it as opposed to just your standard variant cover, which is typically an extra $1 and you're just getting the cover art. So to me, that feels kind of like when you're buying DLC for a video game and you just buy a skin as opposed to getting more gameplay out of it. Like with this, you're getting some actual content out of it. So me personally, I'm not a Marvel person myself, but this definitely has my attention. I'm going to put it in, you have my attention. If a book I was reading did something like this, I would definitely check it out and go for it. I guess if you are a bigger Marvel fan than me, maybe you might put it in the I need it category, but if anyone who's watching has read this before, let me know. Is it worth the extra $1? I think it sounds pretty cool to me. Alright, next up we have crossovers. So, crossovers have been a thing in comics since the Golden Age. I mean, you had the World's Finest book from DC, which was a Batman-Superman crossover. And there have been a lot over the years, mostly between the same publisher. And in the 90s, there were some big Marvel versus DC crossovers. And that's when characters from different worlds, different genres kind of started coming together, and I mean, what better way to boost sales than to include two different fan bases in one property? For me, these tend to miss the mark. I'm not the biggest fan of crossovers. I do like them, like the older ones, like the Brave and the Bold, World's Finest from DC. I like seeing different characters from the same world crossover occasionally. These days, there have been a lot, and it's not for me, but I do like picking up some of the older crossover books, and when I do, they're normally in a dollar bin, so put that one in a dollar bin. I could see why people really like this kind of stuff. I could imagine Marvel versus DC being a big thing when it happened at the time, but for me, right now, yeah, it's not for me. I prefer characters in their own books, so that's where I'm going to stand on that one. Next up, Treasury Editions. So these have been around for a long time, since like the 70s or 80s. These were kind of the first sort of collector's edition comic in a way, and they're mainly reprints of old material in an oversized format, and they have been making a comeback with the rise of facsimiles being released like every week. They're doing a bunch of these Treasury Editions now. There's one they just put out of the saga of Ra's al Ghul, which I think is an awesome story. I would highly recommend that if you haven't checked it out. So, personally, I don't have any Treasury Editions in my collection, but I think for people who are just getting into it, to walk in a comic shop, you're probably getting the most bang for your buck out of something like this. Just based on the content you get, like, yeah, they may be priced a little bit higher than some of the other books, but you're getting a lot of content. They look beautiful. I'm a big fan of the big oversized art, and I heard that they just released a new Superman Treasury, so there are new ones coming out, and if you want to catch up on old stories, this can be a great way. They're normally not too expensive. I think I'm going to put it in I Need It, just because I think even though I don't have any myself, for a lot of people, these are a great option. So next up, we have the number one, and I think, yeah, we all can agree there have been too many reboots, too many back to number ones, and it's almost always a marketing gimmick, and it hasn't really gone over well, especially within the last decade. The last one that's really popped off was DC Rebirth, and then they continued to change it, and now Batman is going back to number one in the middle of the big Hush event, just to confuse people even more. So we're gonna put you in You Tried. Like, there have been some successful reboots. Sometimes going back to number one is good and essential when there's such a big status quo change, but at this point, it seems like this is just a way to revive a series that isn't doing that great, and yeah, not a big fan. So You Tried. And then we have foil variants. So this might be a hot take right here, but personally, I don't love foils. Like, I think that they look cool. I think when it's the right picture, when you hold it in the right light, it looks good, but honestly, I think the colors just look kind of dim compared to a standard cover. So at this point, I tend to just gravitate towards a regular cover over a foil. Again, it depends on what it is, where the foil is used, but I'm going to put it in the dollar bin. Like recently with Mark Spears, he did a connecting cover set for the Absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and I had the option to get either the foils or the regular, but I just felt like the regular looked better to me, just seeing them on the shelf there, because the colors were too drowned out in the foil. My hot take, I'm sorry. And speaking of connecting covers, we will go with that one next. We have the connecting covers, and I like this gimmick. I think connecting covers are cool when it comes to the variant world, and just because you get more art. The earliest connecting cover I could find online was with Teen Titans and Batman and the Outsiders, which was done by George Perez and Jim Aparo, which is really cool if you're already buying the books anyways. My favorite connecting cover set is the Ghost Machine #1s. When they launched, they released 3 #1s, and they were all connecting, showing the massive world. And I like these because a lot of modern variant covers are just kind of headshots or close-ups of characters, and I like that you get more of a dynamic, maybe action sequence going on in the connecting covers. So I'm gonna put these in I Need It. I think that they're one of the top tiers. We have the newest craze, the comic pack. So people have been ripping comic packs like they're Pokemon. For me, I'm definitely not buying on this gimmick. I think it's kind of corny. They're doing it for Batman #1, and I would just say, like, especially with how much some people try to sell these packs on the secondary market, unless if you're getting it for cover price at the comic shop, I would say just wait and look for the cover that you want and buy that one. I was looking into the one they did for Red Hulk quite a while back. That was one of the first ones that kind of broke the internet with those whatnot packs. And I wanted to see if things actually held any sort of value from this, and it looked like for a little while they were selling, like back in April. But as of today, there's a listing that was about to end and nobody bid on it. So, personally, I'd say just wait. I'm gonna put this one, leave it on the shelf. And the reason I'm saying leave it on the shelf, maybe if no one buys it, the shop owner will just rip it open, and then you can buy it in the dollar bin. But I don't think anyone's gonna care about these things long term. Maybe that's another hot take. I don't know. So, next up we have 3D comics. So, as you can see, they've been doing these for a while. This one right here, this Superman book, is from the 50s. And I'm not a fan of 3D. 3D is one of those things where they try to make it happen every few years, and it just doesn't happen. No. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of 3D movies, and especially in print, it just, nah, you tried. And then we have the dreaded poly bag that lives rent-free in the dollar bins. You find so many of these things in dollar bins. The whole Death and Return of Superman, the first Victor Zsasz Shadow of the Bat #1. All of these collector's items from the 90s are sitting in the dollar bins. Right here you have X-Force #1, which had a trading card with Deadpool on it, but if you didn't get the trading card with Deadpool, that $10 book is now living in the dollar bin. So there you go. This is my tier list for 10 of the comic book gimmicks that I thought would be fun to talk about. Of course, there are many more. There are many different types of variant covers. Unfortunately, at this point, with the collector's market being where it is, a lot of it is more about the collectability than the actual story inside, but there are a few cases like with the Marvel Red Band and the Treasury Edition where I feel like the content you are getting is actually worth the gimmick. So let me know, what's your favorite comic gimmick? What's one that gets you every time? What's your least favorite? You hate them all? Let me know. Anyways, thank you for watching. Peace.